Good afternoon. And let me see. Yes, we are back live in the broadcast. Happy to have you with us in the edition of 11th of February. We are doing the broadcast on LinkedIn today, and at the same time on YouTube. And my name is Pieter Hoekstra, and I'm your host today. And yeah, what do we have on the schedule? As I promised last week, we are going to talk about organizational behavior management. And for those that are not familiar with this title of this book, then there is an extra interesting to listen, because today we will talk about what is behavior, and I will interview Robert Dembroder. And he is sitting behind the virtual door next to me. And let me clear the layers so that you won't have the text in front of the screen. And Robert, there we go. Okay, for those that are familiar with the content in Unified Service Management, they have seen probably OBM, Organizational Behavior Management, mentioned there as well. It's only one page in the USM Unified Service Management book, but my idea is to talk longer than one page, and then I go to the author, one of the two authors of this book, Organizational Behavioral Management. And so I'm ready to introduce you to Robert Dembroder. And let me see if he is there waiting for us. Yes, Robert, welcome. Nice to have you in our service management broadcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. And thanks for having me.
And well, Robert, maybe to start with, one of the first questions that I have in my mind is, you started to write this book. Which year was it that you were working on the first blanco page that you were filling up?
Yeah, well, it's been a while back since I started writing. A few years back, I was together with Paul Wilkinson.
Okay.
Who you had one of the interviews in recently.
Yes.
While we were on the boat traveling from Den Helder to one of our islands in the Waddenzee, Paul and I talked about the link between organizational behavior management and organizational behavior management. So that's one inspiration. And I promised him, I said, Paul, I will write down a book. But the first manuscript that I produced was shot down by the editor, basically, because there was too much service management involved. So I had to start not from scratch, but almost from scratch again.
Yeah.
And then rewrite the book and to make it more like a clean book only about organizational behavior management. And the total writing process took about 2.5, 3 years.
Okay. Yeah. What a journey. And but for those that have never been in touch with the material, do you have a couple of points that you would like to share so that people get the flavor of what's all about OBM?
Yeah, organizational behavior management is a scientifically validated practice, you could call it, or a method, or an approach, or a management philosophy. I don't care how you call it, it's just a matter of labeling here. And what it does is that it helps solving organizational issues or organizational problems.
Yes.
A strong focus on the behavioral part. As you know, probably from other frameworks and best practices and management philosophy, they all point to the importance of behavior, culture, attitude as
Yeah.
being key success factors, critical success factors. You have to do something about that. And then how to change that, how to change behavior, how to come up with this new culture, how to build right behaviors. That question remains open, and that's where OBM comes in.
Yeah. And well, that brings me to one of the slides, I think, or pictures that you have in the material, like performance in context. Can you help us out? What is what you would like to bring across with this picture?
All right. So, if you are in an organization, you have your unique organizational context. But every organization basically is unique, even though you have certain industries, like you have educational industry or production industry or a healthcare industry. But in essence, an organization has its unique organizational context. And everybody who is working for that organization should deliver a certain level of performance. And that's what this picture is about. It defines performance. So what we're looking for is people that contribute to organizational vision, mission, goals, objectives by producing desired results through desired behavior. And if the number of desired results increase through an increase in the frequency or amount or intensity of desired behavior, we talk about, we refer to that as performance increase. What we want is an increase in performance. And that means that, well, as an organization, you should have a clear vision, goals, objectives, and maybe even a strategy to get where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to basically translate that goals and objectives into, okay, what kind of performance do we need from the people to get where we want to be? So that's why performance is one of the building blocks in OBM.
So that means that your key performance indicators are, in your way of thinking, much more behavioral related than technical or other kind of repetitive numbers that people use. You probably like to look at more, what is the result of the behavior?
Yeah, so for us, key performance indicators, they are linked to the number of the desired results. So you could look at are we indeed increasing the number of desired results? Or you could look at, is the desired result that we're producing increasing in terms of quality or in terms of meeting customer needs?
Yeah.
So that's one part. And the best way to get those results is through, as we call it, emitting more desired behavior, or the desired behavior more often.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once we have defined the desired behavior, then this behavior becomes measurable. So then you can basically build two kinds of indicators, result-based indicators. And that could be output or outcome, pick whatever you want.
Yeah.
And then you could measure the behaviors.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, nice. So that means that if organizations start to think like we want to be more customer oriented, then it is probably too high level. You need to make it more specific.
Yeah, so then you have to break it down and say, okay, what kind of results would contribute to customer satisfaction?
Yep.
And you can break it down in terms of, okay, what kind of behaviors would increase customer satisfaction?
Yeah.
And if you combine the desired results and desired behavior, then you have performances that could be linked to an increase in customer satisfaction.
Yeah.
And the technique that we use for that is what we call that you operationalize customer satisfaction. So you break it down into components that contribute, demonstrably contribute, because you want to look for cause-effect relationship.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you have to do then, of course, is you have to find out which components of your product or service contribute to customer satisfaction, what are the attributes of it, or what is required, and then you have to translate it. Okay, and then what do the people in our organization have to do to deliver those kind of services or to deliver those kind of products that demonstrably meet customer needs or customer requirements.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's very specific and very measurable also. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then it becomes also a better guideline for people to understand how they need to behave to get that specific result. So that's,
Exactly.
yeah, nice. Yeah, I see a lot of organizations struggling with it or they define it too high level. And in this way, you can make it more practical for people. And it will be easier for them to demonstrate this behavior because you make it so explicit. And so, yeah, that's what I really like about OBM. You also talk about operand behavior. And what does it really mean if you talk about operand behavior, if I pronounce it correctly?
Yeah, it's operand behavior, yeah,
Yes.
perfectly pronounced.
Okay.
Well, as a human being, you have the ability to respond to your environment in two ways. We have something that we call respondent behavior, and which is also known as reflex behavior.
Okay.
And reflexes have a downside for us in the service management area because reflexes don't produce value. Example of reflexes are the saliva reflex. So if you put food in your mouth, then you start salivating, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
produce saliva to help you digest the food and swallow it. Another one would be the pupil reflex, where if I would shine a bright light in your eye, your eye will respond to it by closing the pupil, right?
Yeah.
And the respondent behavior, or the respondent, as we simply call it, or reflex is another term for it,
Yeah.
is a model that we call stimulus response model. So because of the light, the eye responds by closing the pupil. Because of the food, your body responds with producing saliva.
Yeah.
And the basic idea is that respondents don't produce any value. Why? Because those kind of behaviors or responses simply make your body function as it should. So without saliva, it would be hard to digest your food, right? And without insulin and without stomach acid and so on. So those are reflexes.
Yeah.
So reflex basically, as Skinner and Holland put it, they control the internal economy of the organism. So it makes your body function properly.
Yeah.
Then the other kind of responses that we have is the operand response. And the operand response is the behavior through which we interact with our environment. And that could be objects like a computer or a car or a cell phone, or it could be, of course, plants and animals, and of course, other people.
Yeah.
So the interaction with our environment is called operand behavior. Why? Because it operates on the environment. It tries to modify the environment. It tries to interact with the environment.
Yeah.
And that is what drives the behavior, because we do the behavior to get a specific response from the environment. And the main purpose of the behavior basically is the function. What kind of idea do you have? What is it that you want? And there's 4 functions. Here you see the list. Attention is a function. Escape is a function, which means that you try to get out of a situation that you don't like or that you find threatening. You could need a behavior to have access to tangible items or preferred items that not necessarily need to be tangible. And you have behavior that we can call operand behavior, which serves either a biological purpose in terms of like, let's say, maintain your body, or things because of the sensory stimulation that the behavior produces. For instance, people that jump out of an aeroplane wearing a parachute. And if you ask them, why do you jump out of your plane? And they start talking about the adrenaline rush or, well, that is sensory stimulation, right? They do it for the kick. So those are the four functions, and all the operant behavior serves one function and sometimes multiple functions.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And once you understand the function, then you can also understand, okay, you understand why the behavior occurs. And then if it is desired behavior, then you can analyze, okay, what can we do to get this behavior more often? And if it's unwanted behavior because it's not productive or it's illegal or it is, I don't know, something wrong with it, then you can, okay, based on the function, you can identify what you can do to change it or to modify it or to stop it even.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do people respond if you are in a training and talk about behavior in this way? Is it like that they are surprised or confused, or what kind of reaction did you get?
Oh, we have various responses. For your information, we deliver this training since 2013.
Yes. Okay.
It's already a long way, a long time available a long time, since 2013. And we had various responses from, okay, this is an eye-opener, to, okay, this is something I already did, but I wasn't aware of that. And sometimes you get some pushback.
Okay.
So people say, yeah, that doesn't feel right to me. Influencing behavior feels like manipulation, and well, that's in conflict with my values or my personal guidelines or something like that. So
yeah, but in the end, we're always influencing, conscious or unconscious. We're always influencing behavior.
That is true. Yeah, that's true. But you can do this on purpose, of course. So you can intentionally increase behaviors you want to see more of, and some people find that, well, debatable. Is that a good strategy? Is that a good way to deal with other people? So what we also aim for is that if you do, as a leader or as a manager or as a coordinator, as a project manager, as an agile coach, scrum master, you name it, you always work with other people.
Yeah.
What we want to teach you is, okay, how to influence behavior of others, but in an ethical way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have been in organizations where people, for instance, are being neglected by their leaders and managers. Or we've seen organizations where there's a high level of micromanagement. Or we have seen organizations where there's a high level of unintentional punishment.
Yeah.
Which toxifies the environment, which drops performance, creates situations where there are burnouts, high turnover, high frequency, short-term leave, demotivated people, low performance. And that is not intentionally created, but that's the result of how people are being led or how people are being managed.
Yeah.
And if you talk with managers and say, do you want to toxify your environment? They say, no, why would I do that?
Yeah.
So then why are you then doing this? And then if you look at the behavior of the leader, then you will see that also their behavior serves a function, serves a purpose.
Yeah.
And all behaviors in organizations, which is for many people also an eye-opener, all the behavior in organizations is trained behavior.
Yeah.
The technical term for it is conditioned.
Yeah.
And there is a mechanism that maintains the behavior, otherwise you wouldn't see it. So every new person that enters an organization first has to adapt to the ways of working in this organization. So that's a learning process.
Yeah.
And depending on experience, this learning process can be swift and brief, and sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but you have to adapt to your environment. And then you start acting within this environment to get what you want or to avoid what you don't want.
Yeah.
And then those 4 functions of behavior basically come into play.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you hire people to become productive employees or to become value-adding
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
delivering excellent customer service or something like that. That's why you need them. And then, yeah, the only way to get that or to produce that is through observable behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were probably, while you were sitting with Paul on the boat, very fast on one line talking about the EBC model. Even last week I used the cards attitude, behavior, culture during one of the workshops that I was working with a client to give them an insight about the relationship between attitude, behavior and culture. But let me share a picture that you also use in your material. Maybe I should make it a little bit bigger. So you see a relationship between ABC, but you use not the term attitude for the trigger. You use a different term for the A.
Attitude, behavior, and culture.
Yep.
And that's one way of looking at it. And what has been wonderful about this is that Paul relentlessly worked with CIOs and other leaders to show them the importance of behavior, attitude, and culture in terms of delivering service and creating / co-creating value with your customers.
Yeah.
So he has been a pioneer in that area.
Yeah.
Right? And what they don't do is explain, okay, why do we see it? So Paul basically lets you look in the mirror and says, look, these are the unwanted behaviors like not understanding business impact or, all the cartoon like. So basically we're looking in the mirror and say, hey, that's us. That's what we do around here. And then of course you get the question, okay, who takes responsibility? Can you define desired behaviors? Which is for many organizations a major leap forward.
Yeah.
But once you have defined the desired behavior, you're not yet ready because you haven't stopped the unwanted behaviors. And there is one step, but that doesn't make it happen. So you have to rearrange your environment to make it happen. That's where our model comes in.
Okay.
The ABC that you just showed a picture from. The ABC model shows you that in the center we have behavior, and then if you would put it in a timeline, then you could modify behavior in 2 ways. One way is that you try to modify behavior before it occurs.
Okay.
And everything that is available in the environment of the performer before the behavior occurs is called antecedent. So it precedes the behavior. And you can modify behavior based on its effect. And the effect or the result of the behavior is called a consequence.
The consequence, yeah.
Right. And science and analysis shows that behavior is not so much triggered by antecedents, but it is mainly triggered by consequences.
Yeah.
And as Skinner formulated it, or he said something like, behavior is a function of its consequences, which basically means we do what we do because of what happens to us when we do it.
Yeah.
Right? So you can see, for instance, with the COVID-19 pandemic, why do we get vaccinated? Although why do most people get vaccinated? Why do we wear face masks?
Yeah.
Why do we do the social distancing routine? Well, it serves a function. So the vaccination should provide a certain level of protection, which is a function of escaping. Prevent getting sick, right? Or prevent getting very sick. So you still could get COVID with your vaccinations, but the impact of the infection would be much less. At least that's what they tell us.
Yeah.
Why do you wear the face mask? To prevent prevent spreading of those viral particles. And why do we close a door when we leave the house? Well, to prevent other people from going into the house.
Yeah.
Why do you make a sandwich? Well, you make a sandwich because you want to eat. So
Yeah.
every time you do something, you do it with a specific purpose in mind. And those purposes, of course, can be brought back to one of those 4 functions.
Yeah.
So we do the behavior because of the effect that we're looking for. And not so much because of the antecedents.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And this is very important as you try to modify behavior. What we see, for instance, is that there's 3 pitfalls that you should avoid. And one of the pitfalls is a very strong focus on antecedents.
Mm-hmm.
So you try to train people, you give them a tool, you give them procedures, you give them working instructions, you demonstrate behavior that you want to see more often, you explain the why, the what, the how, the when, the who,
Yeah.
and then you think you're done.
Okay. But you need to focus on the consequences.
Well, 30 plus years of service management show us that it's not helping that much. What you mainly see is they try it, and sometimes they revert to the old ways of working.
Yeah.
And there's a cause for that.
Yeah.
And the cause is found by analyzing what happens to a person that does what you ask from them. And if they perceive it as not reinforcing, even worse, they perceive it as a form of punishment.
Mm-hmm.
And punishment, mind you, is not that we humiliate people or that we tell them to leave the room or that we belittle them. No. Punishment simply means that your behavior produces an effect that you don't like.
Yep.
And that effect can occur automatically. For instance, you bump your knee against your desk, then you will feel pain, probably something you don't like. And what happened basically is that the desk has punished you because you hit it.
Yeah.
And the pain occurred, right? So that's what we call automatic punishment.
Yeah.
But punishment also occurs, for instance, when people get feedback.
Yeah.
If you work your fingers to the bone, and I said, Pieter, that's nice, but it's not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
That's something you would like to hear.
That's
Or
right.
if I tell you you're doing it wrong,
Yeah. Yeah.
how does that feel? And if you say, well, I don't like that, then I have unintentionally punished you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once I punish you, even if it's unintentionally, then you will try to avoid that effect in future. So you will modify your behavior simply to avoid being corrected again or getting feedback again. So that's how behavior is influenced by its effect.
Yeah.
And then you have 2 effects. One of your own behavior, where you try to influence your environment to the best of your abilities to get what you want, basically. But your environment is also responding. Say, hey, Pieter, you're doing a great job. Then I try to reinforce your behavior. Or, Pieter, you're doing a lousy job, and the thumb goes down, and then you feel corrected. You feel maybe you feel helped or supported. But then you also want to know, I did this wrong. How can I do it better, right?
Yeah.
But then you have the interaction. And what makes it complicated is that you have 2 points of view.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is reinforcing for one person could be punishing to another person, which makes it complicated.
Yeah.
And OPM helps you to analyze those interactions, basically.
Yeah. So that brings you, if you go through these steps, to a kind of protocol for organizational behavior management, and where you learn people through the book and in the training to pinpoint, to measure, to do this ABC analysis. And what I also like in your material is the importance, as you mentioned, about feedback. For some people, it's constructive feedback, and they see it as a kind of positive reinforcement. For other ones, it's still painful to hear. So you also need to give feedback on the feedback to find out if it works or not. And so, what I would like to share is this slide that I have over here. So this brought you up to these 7 points.
Yeah, this protocol is not invented by me. This is based on like 50 years of experience in the field. And this is the protocol that has been devised by Maurice Riedag from the VU in Amsterdam.
Okay.
And it's based on earlier versions of the protocol. And this protocol basically structures an OBM intervention. So if you want to improve a certain performance, so that means improve the desired results through the desired behavior, you first have to be very clear to people, okay, what is it that we're looking for? Which problem are you trying to solve here?
Yep.
Which is one of the protocol pinpoint, the thing that you want to work with. And then, of course, OBM is not about opinions, but OBM is about data. So what we do is then we measure the current level of performance in terms of results and in terms of behavior. How often are we already producing desired results? How often are we already emitting the desired behaviors? And then we want to understand, okay, why do we see the current measurements? And the technique that we apply to that is the ABC analysis followed by a consequence analysis.
Yeah.
And if you want to make an intervention, you also can do something that we call a can't do, won't do analysis.
Yeah.
Based on your ABC analysis, you can simply identify the reasons for poor performance. That could be that people want to, but they can't, or something is blocking. So you have to remove the blocking parameter. Or they could do if they wanted, but they choose not to do it.
Yeah.
And then other people say, yeah, but what if you are not allowed to do it? And so they talk about this triad model.
Yeah.
Basically, if you're not allowed to do it, then if you still do it, then you will probably get some form of punishment or a correction or negative feedback, so then people don't want to do that. So if you're not allowed to do it, we simply say, okay, then probably people don't want to do it because of the repercussions it will bring them.
Yeah.
So you can analyze what happens, and that's step 3, and why you see what you have, what you already see. And usually you will see a balance between like 80% of the time things go right, and then 20% of the time things go wrong, or not as well as you want it to be. So you could analyze why is sometimes it going well and why is it sometimes not going well. Usually you find a balance like 30-70 or 80-20, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It is rarely that things go wrong 100% of the time. I have never met such a situation. There's always a situation where you have this balance.
Yeah.
And then of course the performance improvement is to get from an 80-20 balance to a 90-10 balance or a 95-5 balance, right? So, and that's where the performance feedback comes in.
Yeah.
That you have to rearrange the environment in such a way that the performer immediately gets very specific information, and this information should guide them in their actions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very specific. So it's not about opinions, but it's about performance measurement.
Yeah.
Okay. Am I doing the right thing, and what's the result of that action? That's performance feedback. And then, of course, based on your first measurement, your first analyses, your first feedback, you have basically set your baseline for improvement. And then you can say, okay, what would be the first sub-goal that we want to achieve? So you want to grow, you want to shape performance to a higher level. That's where the protocol step setting sub-goals comes in.
Yeah.
And then everybody knows that if you achieve a goal or a sub-goal, it is a good practice to celebrate that achievement. So that's where step number 6 comes in, reinforce. You have to make sure that the behavior, every increase in performance should be celebrated, basically. And you can do that through automatic reinforcement, because you do it correctly, you get the right results, which is also a form of reinforcement. And you could add the social component, where you catch people in the act of doing something right, which also reinforces behavior.
Yeah.
And if you do that correctly, you will see an exponential growth in performance.
Yeah.
And then, of course, let's say that you have solved this very specific issue in a process or in a practice or in a value stream. Then there will always be something else that you would like to address. So what you can do is evaluate, adjust, and conclude. Okay, we have done this intervention. What did we learn? What is it that we want to keep? What is it that we need to improve on? What is it that we should get rid of? And then you can apply that in your next intervention.
Yep.
How the protocol supports you in improving performance in an ethical way, and making sure that people are happy to perform.
Yeah.
So they feel valued, they feel recognized, they feel rewarded for delivering good performance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is very important, because that motivates people.
And I think you also remove a lot of stress and uncertainty if you're able to explore together what is successful behavior within our organization. And it reminds me, I was working on a project a couple of years ago for KLM Cargo, and there you saw, in most of the cases, very secure behavior. People were aware of wearing a helmet, walking between the yellow lines. But at the moment that there was a delay on a flight, then people start to almost panic and run and rush. And then the riskful behavior pops up, and people get injured and even more. So the danger was popping in. So to maintain a kind of routine, even if it becomes stressful, it's important to stimulate people to do things in a certain way. Have you done this also, for example, for police or for organizations where stress can easily become dysfunctional in doing these kind of routines?
Yes. Now, actually, KLM has recently started with OBM. So we have trained a number of people from KLM. And well, there was a small video clip on LinkedIn. I recently saw one of the people that was trained through the university in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
But I have also personally trained a number of people from KLM, and they are very eager to work with the protocol and see if they can improve performance there. We also train people that works in an international organization that produces dairy products. And there the link with OBM was also for behavior-based safety.
Yeah.
For instance, where people are that work in a plant where there is machinery, heavy machinery, which needs to be maintained to keep it functional and operational. And what sometimes happens is, under stress or for other reasons, people ignore safety regulations.
Yeah.
For instance, where maintenance is what they should do. Let me rephrase that. What they should do is, if they want to apply maintenance to a machine, they should lock it out and tag it out so that the machine becomes no longer operational and the moving parts come to a halt.
Yeah.
Then you can apply your maintenance routines in a safe way. And then you restore the machine to being operational. And what sometimes happens is that people are maintaining machines while they are still operational, which introduces all kinds of risk to hands, fingers, arms, face.
Yeah.
So, well, then of course everybody understands that behavior is a critical part or a contributor to incidents and accidents.
Yeah.
And the question is, why would anybody put his hand into a moving machine? So we have to understand the environment, and we have to understand what it is that the person wants to achieve, and maybe even what it is that they want to escape.
Yeah.
And to explain why people put their hands in this moving part with the risk of getting hurt.
Yeah.
So we have to have a close look at the environment. For instance, we have to look at the performance indicators that are used.
Yeah.
And let's say safety regulations, just like in your example, are the first thing that they drop when pressure occurs.
Yeah.
Right? So, is there something that we can do to prevent that from occurring?
Yeah.
And of course, training people in, okay, how do you analyze the behavior? Because remember that if you have such an accident or you have a near miss, something that almost went wrong,
Yeah.
it always consumes a lot of time. You have to shut down the machine. You have to clean the machine. Let's say that somebody lost a hand, something like that. There will be blood, human remains in the machine, so that has to be cleaned.
Yeah.
That will take a lot of time, take a lot of effort. Of course, you have somebody who's hurt badly, so this person has pain and maybe
incapable of working. Yeah.
The rest of his life, right? So that has a major impact on this person, on his private life. So, right?
Yeah.
Also, it has negative impact on your business, and it will consume a lot of management attention.
Yeah.
So, they want to find out what happened. Are the safety regulation? Is there something missing? Somebody didn't pay attention? Did somebody, like a supervisor, not pay attention? I don't know. And before you know it, you run into something that we call the blame game. So that people start pointing at each other. Yeah, but that's your fault, and you should have been doing this, and should. So that's not what you want.
No.
So you should be looking at ways to prevent that. So you have to look at the environment in which the accident or the near accident took place and see what can we do to make the safe choice more interesting for the performer.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what you want. So
that's well phrased.
One of the godfathers of OBM says, "You don't want to be saved by accident." Well, I really like that quote. So.
Yeah.
You want to be safe on purpose. So you have to create this environment in which safe behavior always prevails over other indicators like time and cost.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a matter of rearranging the environment in which safe behavior is encouraged and maintained.
Yeah. Well,
and then in service management, we see the same problem. So let's say that you look at the service desk, where service desk employees, they know they have to record every call that comes in.
Yeah.
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
They know they have to record, they have to link the incident, for instance, to a configuration. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
They have to record everything around this incident, what they know about it. So they have to fill in a number of fields in their tool. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
And so how can you change that in such a way that they start recording every incident that comes in?
That's also why I'm very interested in behavior and also in group dynamics, like what makes in this group that people contribute in such a way, or same person in another group that he or she doesn't dare to perform this way. And I think a lot of organizations totally underestimate the importance of daring to dive into talking about behavior. And even in private relationships, I mean, it's in a lot of places, it's still taboo. And if you dare to give feedback and explore, even are able to give feedback on the feedback so that people learn, like you can better say it in this way to me than in this way. That's very personal. But the better you become in sharing this way of interaction, you are building strong relationships, strong teams, and And that's also how you build strong systems. And that's what I like also about the whole definition about systems in itself. It's not the parts that creates the system, it's the relationship between the parts. And then if you want to have strong relationships, behavior is, I think, one of the most important elements. But I'm looking at the time, Robert. I would like to thank you a lot for giving us some insight in the OBM material. I would encourage people to follow the training, to invest in the book and start to talk about it and to play with the routine, to give feedback to each other, because whatever method or best practice you are having in your organization, Prince2, ITIL, Unified Service Management, all these beautiful things. It's like having a taxi driver in Amsterdam with a driving license. It's the behavior that can give us the trust that he will drive there in a safe way or not. Thank you again. Enjoy the weekend, Robert.
Okay, thank you, Pieter, for having me.
Yeah. I'm looking at the queue of comments that we're having, and let me see if I can put it in my screen over here. And I see some questions from Jan, from Rob, okay, there's quite some interaction going on. But let me first go to the first question. Comes from Jan. Is the crucial condition for those influencing behavior to be fully identified with the organizational principles, values, and mindset? And so that is what you can see in the queue over here. And let me see if we have Robert with us. And let me clear this over here. And yeah, while I'm doing this, I need to press on a couple of buttons, but there we go. Okay, let me see. Robert, can you hear us well? Are you with us? And yeah, nice. And I just need to check in this way if I can hear you well, because that's the challenge of doing a final live interaction afterwards. Robert, regarding the question, help me out. What is your first response?
And it's about the being. Oh, I hear myself in the feedback.
Yeah, that's right. There's a small echo. I will make it less louder over here, and then the echo is solved. Yeah, go ahead, Robert.
All right. So it is very important that you understand your corporation's values, principles, and even mindset. Because if you observe behaviors of others, you will use those norms and values and mindset as a frame of reference in order to determine whether you should reinforce the behavior or stop it.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, while I'm listening to you, I was a bit distracted because there is a small delay when we do this live. But let me put myself in a bigger screen and move over here to see. There was another interaction, other question, and I think it was from Rob. But you use OBM to modify ABC, and if we talk about ABC, then I'm thinking about, or maybe I should do it in this way. The cards of Paul Wilkinson. Yeah. What is your answer to this question, Robert?
Well, first, the answer is yes. Because with the issue of ICT cards, you can identify in generic terms the attitude, behavior, cultural issues that you run into. And as you have seen in the video, just like now, is that those cards basically make you look in the mirror. And then you start recognizing this is exactly what we have. And of course, then you can think about, okay, who should take responsibility to fix this issue? So the cards and the book basically is a review, a list, an overview of behaviors that you will see a lot. And some of them you recognize as being part of your own organization. But what the book of ABC of ICT does not explain is how to get rid of those unwanted behaviors and change them in more productive or more desirable behaviors. And that's where OBM comes in.
Yeah, thanks. And I just had to play it a little bit with the sound to be sure that it comes nicely over out there. And I'm looking at the clock. It's almost 6 o'clock, much longer service management broadcast that I'm used to do, but we had a lot of content to share. I really would like to thank you, Robert, for first of all answering the interaction that we did as people noticed, because we have now different clothes on than 2 days ago when we did that part, and by bringing this out live and doing the interaction with you and the questions out there, I'm quite happy to experience in this way. Thanks again, Robert, for stepping in and joining. We will do a next one later on, probably in April in Dutch. Due to the fact that we do it now in English, has to do with some other dynamics that are coming in the near future regarding news about unified service management and the exams coming through APMG. And I think you are also linked to APMG with your exams. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. If you follow an OBM training from a licensed trainer, then you will have access to licensed training materials, including an online app. And that app will help you train and become more proficient in OBM jargon. And then if you finish the training and you want to do the exam, then you can enroll for an exam at APMG International.
Yeah, nice. And well, this is the same what has recently been built up with unified service management, and if I compare it with the exams of ITIL, which I offered through my organization as well. I was quite surprised with the price increase, and so I'm happy that we can offer now unified service management exams for even less than half of the price. And it's all about that people understand service management, but that's not enough. The right behavior is, of course, very important as well. Okay, I think we need to step into the weekend. Thanks a lot for joining, and talk to you later, Robert.
Okay, thank you for having me, Pieter. It was an honor, and looking forward to have the interview somewhere in April.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. And also for you out there following this session through YouTube or LinkedIn, I'm happy that you stepped in. We are exploring some possibilities even to make it more interactive. So instead of doing the broadcast, that we share a meeting setting where a couple of people can join the meeting and that we can do the broadcast at the same time. But we will slowly build it up, and for those that are almost finished with work, enjoy the weekend. And for those that still have to work, then I hope that you have been a bit inspired to do things slightly different than the day before, and all to improve and to have more fun and to make things better, faster, cheaper, easier and more secure. Thank you.